welcome to the Universal Church of Truth for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the finale. That's what it would say on the toilet paper, is Obi-Wan Kenobi, the finale. It is the wee early hours of the morning. For me, it is later than that for Joe.
Hello.
Joe, let's start how we normally do. What were your overall thoughts, feelings, concerns, emotions, notes on this Obi-Wan Kenobi's Episode 6 finale?
I was curious how they're going to wrap it up. I couldn't really wrap my head around how the stories would connect, especially now with the setup with Reva at the end of the last episode. But I am surprised at how well it. I still think that it's not the tightest glue that's holding this plot line together with the sudden Luke visit. But I have to say that I was impressed with this episode a lot more than I thought I would be, and the emotional gut punch that a lot of scenes offer in this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I was sort of nervous going in, for a lot of similar reasons as you. I feel like that seems to be the recurring theme with a lot of the Disney Plus shows that are like 6 episodes long. Is it's like a really solid first 5 episodes, but there's so much going on that you're just concerned about the wrap up going into the finale. I liked it. I don't know. I'm in like a weird. I literally just watched it. It just finished 15 minutes ago for me. So I haven't had a ton of time to sit with it, and a lot of Star Wars things, my opinion sort of changes a lot based on time and understanding and thinking about it. Because there are a lot of layers to Star Wars storytelling, good and bad. I mean, I famously don't like The Rise of Skywalker, but even I have to admit certain things in there have aged better than I thought they would, and other things have aged worse. And just like Star Wars is really complicated storytelling. There's a lot of complicated emotions involved, so I feel like, especially something of this magnitude, my opinion will change here or there. Right now, I don't know. I think that it's better than I feared it could be, but maybe not as good as I hoped it would be. Like, I think it's somewhere in the middle for me, where I liked it as an episode. There's a lot of stuff I do like. There's a lot of stuff that even in the last 15 minutes, I think I like more than I did 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing. But I also like, I don't know, there was something about it that I was hoping would be better, but there's also a lot of stuff in there that I really, really, truly love. There's quite a bit to talk about, though. We can talk about it from beginning to end, or we can just hop right into the meaty stuff. I feel like
stuff, because
yeah,
what everyone's going to be talking about.
that's what everyone's gonna be talking about, and what everyone's gonna be talking about is Obi-Wan and Vader. That is, they've been billing it as the rematch of the century since before the show came out. It's what the whole show has been leading up to. It is what everyone is looking forward to. And in this episode, we finally get a proper duel between Obi-Wan Kenobi and his former apprentice. Joe, what were your thoughts?
I had a laugh because the planet they were on, I had no idea where they were, but it was visually interesting.
Yes.
Because long ago, when like Obi-Wan was getting advertised, there was like this one banner with Mustafar.
Mhm.
They would have their final, the reunion battle on Mustafar, and then the show not even to go near Mustafar for that is kind of hilarious, which makes me wonder, is that fan made that just someone accidentally used as an advertisement?
Part of me wonders if it was like concept art, like like when they were devising the series, there was an idea that they would return to Mustafar for the final battle and like replicate it, and that they maybe when they started advertising it, it was just like the best piece of art they had, and they were like, yeah, we'll just throw that out there. Plus, you use the visual cues of Mustafar, and that brings back a lot for a lot of people. So I think it was definitely a good advertising tactic. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I wonder if Mustafar was ever like legitimately the plan, because I also think that if you have that duel on Mustafar again, it almost takes away like the individuality of
The original.
of the that original climactic duel, and it's just what they did on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith is so good. I almost don't know. Like, I think if you take it back there, you can't do a duel that's more interesting or better. Do you know what I'm saying?
Scale, especially with the action generally, how it's been portrayed, and it's. I mean, like the final battle here was a bit more. So we talked about how the camera was being shaking less and less. You saw that this time around there was barely, there was still movement, but it wasn't as consistent as it was before. But it wasn't. I still wouldn't call it a classic prequel battle. It felt more like a combination of the original and the prequels, where there was still some like I love that one moment where they're between rocks and just for some reason Obi-Wan does a flip in the middle of it just
Yeah,
to cut it around him.
that's
But
very prequely.
yeah, but I did love that he did a stance. That was the one big thing I did love at the beginning, that he finally and then even Vader going, "You have found your strength again." That was a great moment. And you see that he's fighting for something, and that's kind of the spark of the rebellion that's like scattering now.
Which is funny. That's probably what pushes him through winning this fight. Is that since episode 3, when he has encountered Vader, and he was still very much like down in it in his own feelings. And this, like, those feelings are all still there, but in the past 3 episodes, he's discovered the path. He has bonded even more with Leia. He realizes that there's more at stake than just his relationship with Anakin, and like that's part of, like you just said, why he's fighting harder per se. But it's funny because ironically, Vader refers to that as his weakness and like why he'll lose, and then ultimately it turns out to be not why he loses. Also, I love that Vader consistently is like, "Yeah, you lose every time, bro. Like, I'm gonna keep kicking your butt." And I'm like, really? Aside at this point, aside from the last time you saw him, you've pretty much lost to Obi-Wan every single time you've ever fought him.
And even last time, the guy was trying to run away from you, so it wasn't really a
Yeah,
fight.
you didn't really like fight him in an outright duel. Like, you kind of just kicked an old dude's butt and like called it a day.
I was surprised though. I mean, it makes sense because a lot about the story is Obi-Wan's reconnection with the Force. Like that's the big storyline here. But I didn't expect him to go full on. I'm gonna just shove as many rocks in your face as I can. And then I love the fact that what the one thing I think the show does well is we get some really creative lightsaber battle elements, like him using the hilt to destroy the breathing plate. It was like I don't think we've ever seen anyone actually use the hilt for anything.
Yeah, or at least not in like a moment as memorable as that. I mean, like, I feel like we've probably seen them use the hilt casually. Like, I feel like there's been some kicks and like hilt like head hits and stuff like that, but never anything where it's like I'm using this as my tool to win.
This is my new
Right
hammer.
now. Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting that duel. I wrote in my notes that, and I've said it before, so many of the duels in this show reminded me of like the Star Wars video game cinematics from like Knights of the Old Republic and like those old games
Yeah.
that everyone used to like share on YouTube and say, why doesn't Star Wars look like this more? That's what it really looked like to me. I don't even mean that in a bad way. That's just what it was very reminiscent of. And I don't think that we have seen a live action Star Wars have lightsaber duels look like this visually. It's like you said, it's a combination of the extravagance of the prequels with the intimacy of the original trilogy lightsaber duels, um, and even a bit of that like raw. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but there was like a certain raw element of the sequel trilogy in terms of like how they fought. They came a lot from like Kylo and Rey being the only ones with lightsabers and having them both be like trained, but also not super duper trained, but also like very emotional when they fought. Like there's a bit of that I felt like in here. So it did seem like this brand new way of showing lightsaber fighting that kind of pulled from like all three eras of lightsaber duels that we've seen, which I thought was pretty neat.
It also fits because Darth Vader, yes, he's extremely powerful, but he's not as bendy as he was, given that he's in this robotic suit. It's not so Vader can't.
Darth Vader, notably not bendy.
Dating profile. Find the Sith near you. But the thing is that you have that contrast between him and, especially because now what they use with Obi-Wan is to also counteract that. We saw Vader literally hold a ship that's trying to get out and drag it down, while Obi-Wan pretty much just lifted all of these rocks in one go and just shifted every single one at him. And he knew he couldn't. He probably would have won because it is once again Darth Vader's arrogance. It's Anakin's arrogance that won, or pretty much led to him losing. And you see that like nice parallel between what's happening here in the flashback as well.
Yeah. They may. I mean, of course, you knew they were going to, but so much of it is about the fact that Vader is Anakin, or whether or not he is Anakin, or that duel. I will say that once again, actually, there are two things in this episode that are essentially just things we've seen Star Wars do before, but with like the characters we love. I'll get to the other one later when we talk about it, but here specifically, Vader. There's a lot taken from Rebels for this duel between Vader and Obi-Wan. His reunion duel with Obi-Wan is very reminiscent of the events surrounding his reunion duel with Ahsoka in Rebels, right down to we see his helmet is sliced open, which is sort of how it ends. The same vocal effect is used, albeit with a different, here it's Hayden Christensen, and in Rebels it's Matt Lanter. But it's the same idea of when the helmet is damaged, it's James Earl Jones's voice, dubbed with Anakin's voice. For Obi-Wan, for Ewan McGregor, the Anakin that he knew being Hayden Christensen, and that's what we see here. And for Ahsoka, the Anakin that she knew being Matt Lanter, and that's the voice that she hears, but it has the same effect of, reminding us that it is Anakin in there. The hero sees what Anakin has truly become inside the suit. And it makes it way more painful when you hear Anakin's voice saying the things that he says, and it really does drive home the fact that like it is Anakin in there, and he is the one saying these things and believing them, and it makes it a little extra painful.
I love the voice effect. I think that was a really cool decision to have that, because you hear every time there's a certain emotion, one of the voices takes over, and it's constantly when there's rage, it's always Anakin's voice, and that's always powerful. And I love that. I don't know what it is, but Obi-Wan Kenobi just creates people that just constantly scream his name at the end.
Yep. I did make note of this.
Scream Kenobi.
Yeah. It's great. There's a lot of stuff I really do like though. I mean, first of all, like you said, I'm glad they went with that vocal effect, because I think the vocal effect is even more effective in what it's trying to say than the visual effect of the face being damaged, which I will say looked really cool here, especially when he lit up his lightsaber and it was like red glowing on his skin and all that sort of stuff. Like that was really, really cool. But there's a few bits of dialogue that are great. Oh, to finish the Rebels thing, I was saying, not only that, but right before he meets back up with Ahsoka in Rebels, no, not even. It is when he's confronting Ahsoka. He also says the "then you will die" dialogue. That's lifted straight from Rebels, which I thought was great. But see, I wrote it down here. Weakness still remains. Oh yes, when he says to Obi-Wan, "I am not your failure." That was a good line. That's a goated line, because for a million different reasons, but thematically, what we've been talking about in this series, he is all sort of freeing Obi-Wan here in a weird way. He says, "I am not your failure. Like this is me. I did this." And in that moment, that is sort of when Obi-Wan said, echoes his saying, like, "Then you are lost," from Revenge of the Sith. I don't remember his exact phrasing in this episode, but it's more or less the same thing. And it's a lot of him realizing, okay, Anakin is dead. And when you flash forward to A New Hope, and he's talking to Luke, and he's saying like, yeah, like your father is dead, or in Empire Strikes Back when he's saying things like he's more machine than man now. He even says he refers to him as Darth, as
Yeah.
though that's his first name, in like a mocking tone on his way out the door here, and that gives a whole new light to when Alec Guinness is calling Darth Vader Darth.
Yeah.
In the original trilogy, like now you're seeing that not as him being weird and old and not understanding how things work. Of course, Darth was originally intended to be Darth Vader's first name when he was a separate character from Anakin, and that's where that sort of like oddity comes from in that script, and now they're justifying it. Star Wars continues to retroactively fix the the mistakes of the originals and whatnot. But yeah, so now when he says that in the original trilogy, it comes off more like an insult than it does like him being weird, which I really like. I like that. And it
When
also
I found that Star Killer is the Skywalker's original name. I
yeah
would High Republic era Sky Killer, eventual becomes Skywalker. It's done.
yeah it's gonna like they would totally do that. They love to do stuff like that. Um, but then also when Obi-Wan is saying to Luke, infamously, he's been made fun of for decades for telling Luke that it's not his dad from, what I told you was true from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
Here we see like it is. Like if this confrontation hadn't happened, there's a much higher chance that Obi-Wan just tells Luke about his dad in like earlier. But because of this confrontation, this is what Obi-Wan needed to let go of that. He needed this to become the guy who lives out in the middle of nowhere and isn't hovering over Luke. Like he needed this to wake up to the reality of things and to free himself from his own guilt. Um, and I thought that that was all very very powerful and good and well done.
It's interesting how a lot of Obi-Wan's storyline, and this is something I've noticed with a lot of Disney Plus shows, is that as much as we talk about pacing in some aspects, what they're always strong at is thematic build-ups. A
Yes.
lot of character arcs, a lot of their seasons are extremely thematically interesting. Even Boba Fett, which I still think is structurally has a big issue, has a strong storyline built around Boba Fett. If it
Right.
only focused on that a bit more, it would have been stronger. And this is the case where it does focus on Obi-Wan a lot. And every character around him builds upon his representation. It's him wanting to hover over Luke to keep him safe, not realizing what the Empire is doing outside of that bubble he was in, witnessing it, becoming part of it, becoming emotionally attached to it, making sure that that spark that would eventually become rebellion gets away. Leia's entire existence as the story is empowering the fact that hey, the legacy of the people he loved most are, they're more than just Luke. They're two people that pretty much needed him, and this is and he was forced to face Leia, and I was surprised that he flew back. I thought that was actually one of my favorite moments that he actually
Yeah.
flew back to see Leia.
To Alderaan, I was very surprised by that too. Just because that implies, I mean, we have the scene of him admitting like, okay, like I feel like Owen can do a pretty good job of handling things, and I feel like I don't need to be lording over it, yada yada, and that explains it. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. There's a lot of implications because that does sort of imply that between the end of this show and the start of A New Hope, like he could have left Tatooine more times if he was really that comfortable after these events. Just sort of like going out and about running errands and just telling Owen it was chill if he took care of Luke for a bit. Um, yeah, that I was shocked for those reasons. But it was such a sweet moment, and you have that really really lovely tenderness between him and Leia, and him sort of being able to finally admit to Leia, yes, I did know your parents. And he that yeah, that was a beautiful scene, and that felt to me almost like what Obi-Wan is saying to her, Obi-Wan is also saying to himself, like in the sense that Leia needs to hear it and it's good for her to hear it and love it. Um, but it's also, how do I want to say this? Like he needed to remind himself why he loved Anakin and why he loved Padme, and that it's okay to love them and feel that and feel remorse and regret and talk about them as who they were and to like celebrate that. And I thought that was really sweet. I also, oh, sorry.
I'm just happy that Padme finally gets some recognition because she's just such an important character in the entire lore, considering what she does in the first films. And she's just the one character who just does not exist in any legacy. And her finally getting that moment, I lost it, like Leia. Even her outfit is like a combination of Padme's and one she would wear later. I'm like, finally, that Padme exists in these characters beyond giving birth.
No, absolutely. And Padme's always been great and fantastic. And it was always George's intent too, that like Padme being as awesome as she was is a huge reason that Leia turns out the way she does, even if they never meet each other. Like it's just in those genetics, which is sort of what Obi-Wan is saying here, and it's great. I also like to think that this conversation is part of the reason why in Return of the Jedi, when Luke says, "Did you know? Like, do you remember your mother?" Leia in that moment, maybe she doesn't know. Like, I mean, she doesn't know that Luke is her brother yet when she answers that question. So for her, maybe she's saying like, okay, I don't really want to get into the specifics of the fact that like I was adopted and like yada yada, and then go into that whole thing. But like, I have a pretty good idea of who she was based on like conversations I've had with other people, i.e. Obi-Wan, and this might be part of the reason she's able to then convey to Luke, like, yeah, she was like warm and loving and all that sort of stuff, which I like that as sort of like a roundabout explanation for an accidental plot hole on George's part.
Padme Force Ghost confirmed.
Padme Force Ghost confirmed. But yeah, so all of that was really lovely. I love the more machine than man now. I don't know. I thought the actual duel between Vader and Obi-Wan was great. I'm not sure it was necessarily like the rematch of the century, but I really, really liked it. The planet, you said you weren't sure what planet they were on. They kept mentioning a planet that has never appeared in Star Wars before in this episode called Tessin or something like that.
But that's where the ship's going.
That's where the ship's going. I don't think that they say what planet Obi-Wan and Vader are on. You could imply that they just go on ahead to Tessin or whatever because it seems new, but I don't think they straight up tell us. So that might be a mystery until some sort of like visual dictionary comes out. We both just completely missed it. But I even went back to see if they like name drop it at any point in time, and I couldn't find any names. So
it would have been awkward if Grand Inquisitor, with his one appearance in this episode, just goes over. Is that the planet Granok? Just that. By the way, I watched the last episode. I never noticed when he makes his entrance, he has this adorable, mean "hello."
Yep. Hello. Hello. I'm the Grand Inquisitor. They're going to Tessin. Now I just picture him as like this little like he has like a little like bow and he's drinking tea all the time.
His entire race is British.
Yeah. Vader's like, we have to go kill him, and he's like, but why would we do that? He can have tea with me. And it's like a weird. Oh boy. God, I feel like there was so much more I wanted to talk about with that. Oh yeah. I want to talk about the fact that when in A New Hope, Obi-Wan and Vader meet up, Vader says, last time we met, I was but a learner, and now I am the master. So for all of time, we have assumed that meant last time you saw me, I was Anakin, and it was on Mustafar, and yada, yada, yada. But now we know that's not true. But canonically, he still does say that sentence. So he's either a big dum-dum, or...
he doesn't count he loses. He only counts Anakin.
He only counts... Yeah.
No. Darth Vader didn't.
No. None of those other things happen.
Is still winning.
He's like, Obi-Wan, you remember last time we met and I dragged you through fire? And Obi-Wan's like, that is not the last time we met. He's like, no. I don't remember. What are you talking about? It's like, I recall breaking your helmet. He's like, no. I don't know. This is my only helmet. I don't have extra helmets. I don't know what you're talking about.
He has like a dent in it where just the thing is. It's like
it's like a strip of Gorilla Glue, like right here. I don't know what you're talking about. It's on your face. He's like, I tripped and fell in the shower. I don't know what you're talking about.
those back to tank explorations.
But yes, yeah. So I think that now means we have to look at that line a little bit more metaphorically speaking.
Which is Star Wars.
Which Star Wars. I mean that that happens all the time. Um, I'm blanking on who says it to him. I think it's Obi-Wan. Says to Vader. Basically, the point I'm about to get at is that Vader, his obsession with Obi-Wan specifically, and him being like, telling the Grand Inquisitor being like, "Oh, this is a great opportunity for us to like stomp out the path and for us to get rid of this whole rebel cell." And Vader's like, "No, screw all of that. Like, I just Obi-Wan, right?" Yeah, like he has this obsession, and this whole the whole last episode was. Oh, I remember the points. They're coming back to me now. In the last episode, Obi-Wan is saying to him in those flashbacks, like, you are going to be an apprentice until you manage to like get over this need to win and your like obsession to be essentially to beat Obi-Wan and like yada 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 until you can drop that, like you will never be a master, is sort of what he says to him. Now, again, this is sort of just me reaching, but I would like to think that Vader is now thinking, okay, after this duel, like I lost, but we're not going to talk about that part. Truthfully, like this is just a lesson that I can now put in my bag of lessons. And I got the bigger picture in mind, especially afterwards when he talks to surprise Ian McDiarmid's Palpatine.
He didn't lie after all.
He didn't lie after all. No, I love that Palpatine, his dialogue actually made me laugh because he's like, I wonder if your thoughts are clear on this. Like just the way he said it was like, your head's in the game, right, big guy? Like that was sort of.
I just love how he goes, my friend.
Yeah, he's like, I wonder. Like just like the like hesitancy in the way he said it was like, yeah, it was brilliant. But yeah, and like that conversation, it feels like Vader's arc in this series, if we were to assign him one, is sort of like getting over his weird Obi-Wan obsession. And he doesn't fully get over it. Of course he doesn't. I wouldn't expect him to. But him sort of realigning himself with the bigger picture and being like, all right, we're gonna circle back to this later. For me, that is him metaphorically dropping it, sort of edging towards the master version of Vader that we see in the actual original trilogy era, where he's less like storming around hallways and like decimating people, and a little bit more like playing things strategically. And I'd like to
walk in room, choke you to death, Vader.
Yeah. Like this, I feel like this is sort of like not the death of that because he still has that forever, but I feel like he's a little less childish after this show.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that that's
in what was in Cloud City where he strategically actually uses them. This Vader would not have done that.
No, this Vader would.
Man, he would have just gone, just get it.
Yeah, so I like to think that this is him edging a little closer to like actual like master of what's going on, Vader. And that's why Vader is so like pumped when he sees Ben again in A New Hope, is him sort of saying, last time you saw me, man, I was pretty erratic, but I've done some meditating, and I think that I'm going to be a little more focused in on this fight. Also worth noting that Obi-Wan still unable to deal a killing blow to Vader, despite even after saying, okay, well, I'm going to start calling you Darth because you're a little nerd, and also even though I now think that you're more machine than man and all that sort of thing, I still can't bring myself to kill you. I'm just going to insult you and then walk away and hope that you kind of like drop all this.
Technically making him even more obsessed.
Yeah, I know. He is Obi-Wan is just an abusive partner.
He's just constantly like, I'm teaching you a lesson, walks away, and it's just like, he'll get over it.
Yeah, I'm sure this is the time that he'll be less mad. It's like, no. What? But yeah, I really like that.
Well, where it's just Darth Maul and he just catches up to Obi-Wan before the eventual actual final fight and just lectures him on, you made me worse. Made I used to be, and then you just put me down.
You know, Obi-Wan. Yeah, Maul getting really mad about it. He's just like, Kenobi.
Kenobi.
You have made me worse. He just can't get over it.
And you keep saying lefty, lefty Lucy already.
Yeah.
I know.
But it's like, oh, you've come to kill me. He's like, no. I want to tell you why you. This is part of my 12-step program. You're like, oh, okay. I've been taking some anger management courses. No, but I really like that, and I really like that ties into what we've been saying about Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
This whole time is that deep down, no matter how much evidence he feels like he receives that that's not Anakin anymore, he still he still believes. He still believes that Anakin's going to come through right up until he dies in A New Hope. And even in A New Hope, he won't strike Anakin down. He won't do it. He refuses to. And ultimately that's the difference between Anakin and Obi-Wan at this point in their lives, is that he won't do it. And I mean, I don't know whether or not he's right to do that is sort of debatable, but it ties in really well to what we see Reva go through in this episode. In that he has seen people be redeemed. He believes in that redemption. He knows it can happen. And even after this fight with Vader, he sees someone redeem themselves. And a lot of people probably would have just finished Reva off in the desert there for like the sake of it. But Obi-Wan says, no, you've made your choice, and I'm leaving you your freedom to live your life however you choose to live it. And then he leaves her there to make her own decisions. And I love that. That's so good. I know you've had a lot of opinions on Reva, so I was kind of excited to hear your thoughts on the way her story ends here.
So Reva, I think she's a character that takes a while to get used to for many, what I've seen online. I mean, besides the certain group, let's not talk about. But the thing about Reva that's interesting to me is that I was happy that she wasn't redeemed last episode. And then I was like, oh, that as soon as I was so confused about the sequence because I thought she was going after him to pretty much get Vader to.
I was confused too because they never really specify what her plan is. She just wants to get to Luke, and you don't know if it's to kill him, to use him as bait. Yeah. I think the implication is it's to use him as bait. Like, I think she wants to get Luke so that she can dangle him in front of Vader and be like, yo, I got your kid. Isn't that crazy? And then can, like, do with that what she will.
I actually took it more as she wanted to take him out because she couldn't defeat Vader.
Ah, see, but this is the nice part of it is I feel like the one thing we know is that in this sequence she's just angry. She's angry that she couldn't defeat Vader. She's angry that she feels like she's wasted her life. She's angry that she couldn't redeem.
Said hello.
Yeah, exactly. She's angry that no one that no one hugged her as a child. Like, she's angry that, like, yada yada yada. And she's lost her goal, and now she just has this new piece of information. She's like, I'm just gonna take the anger out at all of this. But I do kind of like that it is sort of like we can interpret that anger how we choose to. And none of it is necessarily wrong, and honestly, probably all of it is a little right. Like, there's probably a little bit of all of it going through her brain, but she was just upset. I like that. I like that she remains in a gray area. Like, I like that she isn't necessarily fully dark side per se anymore, but she didn't redeem herself. She just didn't kill. She just didn't kill Luke.
What the interesting thing about her story is that it makes more sense, which we've always said that once the show ends, it will make more context.
That's the goal.
And I'm okay with the direction they went with the flashback in the beginning, because it was about the vagueness of taking these lives, and Anakin went a step that he could never return from. Yeah. She almost did. But the thing is that she lived through that experience and echoing that experience. And the way when she sees herself as a younger kid laying there, that's powerful. Then the flashbacks with Anakin, and then her line with Obi-Wan is like, I didn't become him. And I wrote in my review what I found interesting about this arc is that a lot about Reva's arc was set in motion through her meeting with Obi-Wan. And ironically, what he did for Reva is what he was trying to do for Anakin.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much as I still think the whole Luke storyline was a little like last minute thrown in, randomly disconnected, and they didn't have a warp drive, but he did in that mini thing and just got there on time, was a little convenient, to be honest. But from a story perspective, it worked very well.
Yeah, I like everything that you said, and I especially like you bringing up that Obi-Wan was able to do for Reva a little bit more like what you said you wanted to do for Anakin. Of course, it wasn't quite as personal or intimate, or they didn't have quite as much conversations, but Obi-Wan, the things he said to Reva are things that he never could have said to Anakin at the time. He is at where Obi-Wan is at in his life now is where he needed to be when they gave him the responsibility of Anakin.
Yeah.
And he, again, I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, he got Anakin too early.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the worldview and experiences that he ends up having now at the time of Anakin. So like with Anakin, he fully believes in that Jedi Order, and I won't go into it again because I've gone into it a million times with that like safety blanket. But now we're seeing an Obi-Wan who's been stripped of his safety blankets and just has to face the world as it is. And that version of Obi-Wan who has seen pain, who has seen suffering, who has seen people struggle and knows that there is so much more to life than that Jedi Order, that Obi-Wan is able to look at Reva with kinder eyes and say, you can choose your own path.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in you. And that's all that Anakin ever wanted to hear from Obi-Wan. You know what I'm saying? And so you're 100% right. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I didn't even think of that until you just said it, but that was really, really great. I also liked that a few other notes I had on Reva, her name being very reminiscent of Revan is seeming more and more purposeful, especially with him being a character who went back and forth between light side and dark side a bunch. Uh, that makes a lot more sense. Also, again, this is probably just me reaching and doing that thing where, but art is subjective. When Reva appears from the darkness and is carrying Luke, it's a very like Cain and Abel pose. And even though Luke is not dead, I love that idea of framing them almost like siblings within the Force, like both of them having those like daddy issues, I guess you could say. Like they're not siblings, but it feels like both of them both of them were so heavily affected by the same man who in a way was sort of like their father. And like I like that framing of them almost as like siblings in experience and in the galaxy. I liked that a lot.
I mean, Abel is always the one to echo what could have been, while Cain was the one who stopped it from happening. And in a way, him being alive echoes that iconic visualization or storyline, but reflects that, the legacy of Anakin. And a lot of this is the legacy of Anakin. Obi-Wan's own storyline is a legacy in that regard. And he has no idea he has a legacy. That's the interesting aspect. Ahsoka's out there. I read someone who said he was really sad Ahsoka wasn't mentioned by, I think, Bail Organa. But it's like, as much as powerful as it would be for Obi-Wan to know, oh, she's out there, a part of his legacy's out there, that's not his focus. It's never been about Ahsoka.
Right.
Ahsoka takes care of herself.
Also, at this point in time, Ahsoka is deep under, like, her being alive isn't a public thing. She's still going by Fulcrum, I think, at this point. So, I'm sure that Bail, even though, like, he trusts Obi-Wan with his life, I feel like there's probably an agreement there to be like, you're out there, but we're not going to tell anybody. Like, nobody gets to know that you're Fulcrum and that you're like working for the rebellion, and all that fun stuff. That sets up a good segue. But before I jump on it, I did want to bring up that I did see on Twitter, and I sort of agree with it, that the whole sequence with Reva was very reminiscent of the Old Wounds comic book, which is a 2005 comic I forget the author's name. I think it's like Aaron something. That was the original Darth Maul didn't die story. It was a short story that was within the Legends canon. Obviously, is no longer canon, where it's revealed that Maul survived the events of the Phantom Menace, that he turned the lower half of his body into robotic spider legs. He figures out where Luke is. He shows up on Tatooine. He tries to kill Luke. Beru and Owen fight him off long enough for Obi-Wan to show up. Him and Obi-Wan have a duel. The whole reason he's there is for revenge on Obi-Wan. Yada yada bada 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 bada. Ends with Maul dying and Luke and Obi-Wan and Owen sort of exchanging words. There's a lot of that comic ends up being canonized in other ways. I mean, Filoni liked it so much that he took the Maul design for Clone Wars. He used the same idea of Maul surviving because he was fueled by hatred and revenge for Obi-Wan. Revenge is a good motivator not to die. And the conversations between Owen and Obi-Wan that happen in that comic happen in this show, and the idea of kind of like this rogue agent who's not really a Sith or a Jedi popping up out of nowhere on Tatooine and trying to kill Luke, and Owen having to fight them off is very much from that comic. So I did want to bring up that Old Wounds seem to be some sort of, whether it was on purpose or not, the spirit of it lives on with Reva here, which I think is pretty cool.
It's, you see a lot of it. I'm curious. I thought at first I was confused when he was helping her up. I was like, now that her revenge is technically gone, would she just die? And part of me is conflicted if her dying would have been even more powerful.
Yeah, well, I kind of went back and forth on that as well. I know the original idea, or at least the rumor is that the original idea was that she would die, and that upon writing the show and seeing Moses Ingram's performance in early episodes, that Lucasfilm was like, oh, we actually don't want to lose this character yet, and changed it so that her fate was sort of ambiguous. And that way, if they want to do like a Reva spinoff or tell her story in comics or whatever, like the door is open. And then if they never use her again, they can probably just be like, she died, or she just like went off and did her own thing. But yeah, I did think about that. I don't know. Part of me says yes, but the other part of me is like, Star Wars has such a long history of having a character finally like come back from being fully dark side, and then they always just die immediately. And part of me thinks like it's gonna be fun to see a character come back from the dark side, and like we get to see how their life looks post that.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like we never get to see that. The only character we really got to see that with was Asajj Ventress, who Reva reminds me of a lot. And she ended up becoming a bounty hunter, and that was all super, super cool. And then her death ended up being way more impactful because we got to see the kind of life that she chose to live after being freed of the dark side. And like that was really cool for me. So I think whether or not I think she should have died in this is going to depend a lot on what they do with her next. Because if they tell a really, really good story with her, I think it's definitely worth having kept her alive. But that is just me.
Reveal Reva is Mace Windu's daughter.
Reva is Mace Windu's daughter. You know there are already people out there like theorizing. What else did I write? Oh, before I forget, the last thing we never brought up. Well, you brought up the rocks in the duel. I did just want to say that was in basic Jedi training. Lifting rocks seems to be like, you know, a common theme of a very like basic concept. Lifting rocks was important to Luke's journey. It ends up being very important to Rey's journey. And I just wanted to point out I liked how they sort of brought that back for this. I mean, the shot of Obi-Wan standing there with all of the rocks lifting behind him in the Force is so similar to The Last Jedi. Another similarity with The Last Jedi, basically everything happening with the path continues to be exactly what they did with the Resistance in The Last Jedi, straight down to them being on a ship and they can't escape, and then Obi-Wan has to go like distract the main bad guy so that they can. It's all right there. Also, O'Shea Jackson Jr. definitely going to be back, because the last time we see him, he literally basically says, I'm just getting started," and Obi-Wan's like, "Yeah, like you're a leader," and whether that means specifically he'll be back or whether that just was a reference to like the rebellion as we know it is starting now. Um, Either way, I thought that was fun.
I
Oh, please continue.
wouldn't be surprised if we also see Hajo back. They
Yeah.
seem to really like him. I mean, Kumai Nyanji is a great cat, so you're not going to waste that.
Yeah, I think that just in general, the path will show up again. I've seen a lot of people speculate that the path will play a role in the Jedi Survivor video game,
Hmm.
um, which I could totally see that making sense, especially with them having come into like smuggled so many Jedi. I could see Cal Kestis being a part of the path and having video game versions of Kumail and O'Shea show up in that game. Even if it takes place before, because it takes place the same year, so you could even have Tala make a comeback if it takes place before um, all of that fun stuff. But what else did I want to say? There's so much to talk about, and I made so many notes, most of which are like incoherent.
I would talk about Owen because
Yes,
did they use him effectively this episode? Him and both Baru also. I mean, they didn't escape. They were going to protect that kid.
yeah,
And when Riva goes, "You're acting like he's your son," and he goes, "He is my son." I'm like,
because
"Oh,
he is.
he is."
Owen's a good dad. Like people always want to turn on him because he didn't love, like he was curmudgeon-y towards Obi-Wan in A New Hope. But like at no point did we ever see evidence that he was like a bad dad. Like he's always loved Luke. He loves Luke, and he will die to protect his family, and it's great. It's great. I love to see it.
It was generally a great scene. It's just that was probably the best of the shootouts of the whole season, which I didn't expect to involve Owen Baruch shooting.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Owen.
sequence ever inside that their home, I think.
Yeah, which was cool. I mean, it's always fun when they tie things back to like the original visuals of Star Wars. I mean, even like Obi-Wan putting on his iconic white robes with like the
Yeah.
brown jacket, which is also a look that he wears in the comics a bunch. That was like another fun tie-in. But yeah, like seeing the inside of the homestead really brings back those like Attack of the Clones and A New Hope memories, and that's always really fun. Um, yeah, no, Owen is. I actually think I wrote down Baru, Chad, Owen, goaded. I really I mean it is cool to see them sort of like get their due. Star Wars got so immensely lucky that they happened to cast um who they did as Owen. I'm totally blanking on his name. Like in 2005, Joel Edgerton. They cast Joel Edgerton, and back in 2005, that was like whatever casting, and then it turned out to pay off really well because he turned out to be a really good actor. So like,
I'm
that's
glad
great.
he came back from that. I'm glad they both did. That was such a nice touch.
Oh yeah, me too. Another, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here, mostly because my brain is scrambled. Truly the I mean the Vader Obi-Wan duel is the talk of the town. So we're gonna keep hopping back in and out of that. Something I meant to say earlier and kind of got distracted. When Anakin says, "I'm not your failure," what I wanted to say on that is, in terms of Anakin, that also is so Anakin to be like, if I am a screw up, if that is true, if I am on the wrong path, you don't get to make this about you again. Like in his head, like he's like, this is me. I
Yeah.
chose to do it. Whether or not this is a failure for you, it's my victory. So lay off. And I liked that quite a bit. Um, yeah, you mentioned Leia. Leia had some good stuff in here. Bale had some good stuff. All the Alderaan stuff was really really great. I do want to talk about Qui-Gon before we run out of time. Um,
Liar.
because he does sort of just slip in at the end.
Yeah, I've been here the entire time. You just couldn't see
Right.
me.
Well, you said earlier, to give you credit, you said earlier that Obi-Wan, like he's back, right? Like he's back to caring about the galaxy at large. He's back to, Vader calls it his weakness, but he also mentions he's powerful again, yada yada yada. He has opened himself back up to the Force. So I feel like the implication there is that Qui-Gon has been there in the
Yeah.
Force the whole time. We know that for a fact. And it was less that Qui-Gon wasn't answering Obi-Wan and more that Obi-Wan was telling himself that he wanted to talk to Qui-Gon, but he knew deep down that would require opening himself back up to the Force, and he still wasn't ready to do that. And it wasn't until after this experience, after seeing the bigger picture, after coming to terms with Anakin, that he was willing to look deep inside of himself again. And once he's willing to do that, then poof, he can see Qui-Gon.
Disney Plus, give us a fun little Liam Neeson voiceover of the entire season with his Force Ghost just being there and commentating on everything
Right.
Obi-Wan is doing and doing wrong.
I I also really like so again, for the sake of this being a breakdown, um something I wanted to mention, Qui-Gon when he first dies when he's first like speaking to there's a bunch of stuff in the Clone Wars animated series about Qui-Gon and his becoming a Force ghost and his relationship with the Force and the living Force and yada yada yada. And initially when Qui-Gon dies, he's only able to manifest his voice. So he exists within the living Force. He is just part of everything flowing through everybody. He's just able, he learns how to communicate. In the Clone Wars, there's an episode where we see him manage to manifest his body for a little bit by using his memories of himself. Um, so it would seem that at this point in the timeline, he has continued his studying and relationship with the living force after death and has now learned how to manifest his whole body as opposed to just his voice.
Yeah.
So that is sort of how that is happening. He's drawing on the memories of people having seen him, which also explains why Anakin looks like young Anakin in Return of the Jedi and not old Anakin post that retcon that people always complain about, because Anakin does in fact manifest himself based on what he remembers himself looking like, which is, not an old man that he never looked like. You know what I'm saying?
And he looks like the version he is in the back to tank, just all
Yeah.
crispy and stuff. Like
why would he? If you can choose what you look like, why are you picking that? You know?
yeah, I would be different.
Yeah. Which makes it extra funny that Obi-Wan actively chooses to manifest as an old man. But that also makes sense because that's what Luke recognizes. But yeah, so that's interesting, and it sets up that like not that there is going to be a season 2, but hypothetically, if they ever did continue this Obi-Wan story, whether it be in comics, animation, whatever, it does set up and finally explain, yeah, he hangs out with Qui-Gon, and that's how he learns to become a Force ghost, and all that fun stuff. Um, let's see. I wrote down a few Easter eggs that we can get to. A lot of dialogue Easter eggs in this. I mean, obviously, Obi-Wan says hello there to Luke when he gets to meet him, which is interesting. I feel like that is more of a plot hole.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, but that's more of a plot hole than the Leia thing is. Because with Leia, he looks at Leia and is like, we have to pretend that like you and I don't know each other for our own safety. And she's like, okay. And based on what we know about Leia, it makes total sense that she would just commit to that bit and like go with it. But Luke in A New Hope is like, yeah, like I know this Ben guy. He's like a hermit. And then when he brings it up to Owen, Owen's like, you don't got to talk to no Ben guy. Let's not get into that. And so for me, it is weird that Owen seems to be okay with Obi-Wan and Luke knowing each other here, and that Luke meets Ben Kenobi ahead of time. That feels like more canon toying with than the Leia thing to me.
I wish
he does say hello there.
Break it. Why didn't they just have him give him the toy? That's what I don't get.
Yeah, I thought he was just gonna give Owen the toy to give to Luke, and then it would be like a fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it ended up him doing a meme.
It ended up him being that I didn't like. That's the one thing I think that like the where Star Wars is headed that bothers me. We bring up Book of Boba Fett a lot. I wrote a whole article about it where like when they do that sort of thing in Marvel and DC movies, it can be cringy but also fun because comics are like that too, and that's just sort of like the type of goofy that those movies are. But I don't like. Yes, Star Wars is about parallels and connections and all that stuff, and that's fun. But when you take a moment and you just have him say like, make like do the roar, like you know what I'm saying? When you just do the roar, that's a Shrek reference, guys. The from the fourth one. That just I want to let that sit for a second. I just referenced Shrek 4, but
You can go with The Simpsons, say the words, and then
say
you're
the
good.
word. Yeah, it's that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't like that. That felt I didn't like that. I like yeah. I don't know. It was weird.
It felt out of play. It was fun, but to be honest, I think it would have been funnier if it was in the middle of something where because that's the joke of it. He's literally being
It would
shot
have
at.
made more sense if he said it to Anakin before the
Yeah,
duel, because it's been established that's like a thing he likes to say to people he's gonna fight. So
yeah.
like that makes more sense, you
Season
know?
2, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hello there.
Yeah, like it just and it was sweet and in the moment, like Ewan acts it really well. Like it doesn't come off like he's saying it as a joke, but I'm just like they wrote it in knowing everyone was gonna be like, he said the thing, and I didn't like that. Um in fact I wrote Mimi bro, Mimi in my
Bro.
um the holster he gives Leia, I would like to point out, looks exactly like the one she has in Return of the Jedi, so it could technically be the same one. She also wears a holster that looks just like that in some of the comics. So it's it's I mean they could be two different holsters that look similar, but it's also I in my head canon it's the same one that she kept. I just think that's more fun and sweet and whatnot. Um, what else? I actually think that was more or less it for there truly wasn't I thought there'd be like more Easter eggs, but it's really just a lot of like he says oh Luke says I'm not afraid when they're prepping him for the attack by Riva, and that was nice because he says that in Empire Strikes Back to Yoda as well, so that's like an established Luke line. They also actively make it that Luke never sees Riva's lightsaber.
Isn't that hilarious? He never sees the lightsaber or her. It's just him like always getting out at the right moment or
Yeah,
becoming
yeah.
just
Which is something they've had to do in Star Wars before. Like this will be the last thing, and then we've gotta go. But yeah, I mean it's very explicitly stated in New Hope that Luke does not know what a lightsaber is. So it would be weird if he had seen it before
yeah.
and then was like, "What is this?" in A New Hope, unless it's just like a severe trauma and he like forgot everything. Um,
Shouldn't this be spinning?
Right, exactly, exactly. Like so it is very funny, but it reminds me a lot of in the Clone Wars because in Revenge of the Sith, Anakin explicitly states that it's explicitly stated that him and Grievous have never met.
Yeah.
But then we find out there's like multiple years of wars where they were constantly in conflict. So it's weird. So throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars, they explicitly had to make it that Grievous and Anakin never come face to face. They could be on the same ship at the same time, but they will like pass each other on separate hallways and like just miss each other over and over again. And it became sort of like a recurring joke because the audience was in on it too, and we knew why it had to happen. And that's why like Grievous and Obi-Wan end up having a rivalry is it's born entirely out of the fact that they couldn't have him also fight Anakin because it was like it would have broken canon. So it always had to be Obi-Wan, which I thought was really, really funny. Um, that's just what that reminded me of. I was like, they're doing the thing again. They have to like tiptoe around the canon they established decades ago.
Like, damn it, how do we make this?
Yeah. Um, yeah, is there any other thing that oh wait, I have a joke that I wanted to make. I do like that at the beginning of the episode, Obi-Wan states out loud for everyone to hear that the confrontation between him and Vader, he's like, "This ends today." He's like, all of my problems are over today." And in my head, I just picture the Arrested Development narrator, Ron Howard, being like, "They did not." Like,
That would have been amazing. They did not.
They did not. In fact, they will duel each other again years later.
It will end
But
badly.
yeah, this was my brain was sort of scrambled for this last hour. I'm a little tired. I watched this episode, still processing it. But is there anything else that you want to talk about with Obi-Wan Kenobi as a series before we close out our Universal Church of Truth on Obi-Wan?
I'll I'll say that as a series, I think it had some great highs, but it also had some lows. And I'm happy that the season finale probably brought it together the most. Probably the better finales for a Disney Plus show, in my opinion.
Yeah. Wait, what was that? Your audio cut out for a second.
I heard the train.
Yeah, I think the train took over. Sorry for the viewers at home. I live next to a train, and apparently it's very active at 7 o'clock in the morning. Anyway.
um, just saying that even if like a lot of the emotional beats are probably due to nostalgia more than the actual story itself, I do think that this is one of the most strongest Disney Plus finales. I still wish the show itself was a little tighter in many ways, but I think the emotional arc and the core narrative that they're going for with these characters, that's what really holds it together, makes it a good watch.
Yeah, I agree. There's another train. We're trying to close it out, and there's another train. I've never seen this many trains go by at the same time. They just want to sabotage us. It's more funny than anything at this point. I agree. I agree. I had really high expectations for the show going in. Anyone who's listened to every one of these episodes can tell Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, and he continues to be. I am so incredibly happy and grateful for some of the moments the show gave us for him as a character. I'm even more grateful that it didn't ruin him as a character, which I was afraid that it might before it started, because that's always a fear. Um, I agree with you. I'm not sure I feel like this show was the like as absolutely perfect as some people seem to think that it was. For the people who do think it was absolutely perfect, I am thrilled for you. That's amazing. Like I'm so happy that you love it. I love it too. This show will always have a really deep place in my heart, I think. It wasn't as perfect as I had hoped, but the stuff that was good was so good. And I don't know. I mean, guys, we got Ewan McGregor back, and I think that, and Hayden Christensen back, and I think that that's important. Um, Honestly, at this point, I don't think it's the last time we'll see either of them. I think that Star Wars is way too Marvelified now for them not to come back at some point. So I don't know. We'll see. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed our coverage of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I have been one half of your host, Hunter.
I'm the other, Joe.
That's the other, Joe. As we established, he's the other half. Um, thank you guys.
This is why it's the Universal Church of Truth. It's like matrimony. Two good halves.
It is like matrimony. Uh, anyway, we're a married couple. Thank you so much, everyone at home, for listening. Have a good one.
See ya.